The DM paints a wide canvas to their world, but how do you know when you're done?
Join us tonight as we show you how to easily add finishing touches to your world building.
That's how we roll. 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 Welcome to the Goblin's Corner. My name is Eric.
And I'm Matt.
And tonight,
we're talking about finishing touches for your world building.
That's right. We talk a lot about world building, and tonight what we're going to do is we're going to give you some tips and tricks, in fact, 8 tips and tricks on how to kind of clean your world building up, make it really interesting, not just for yourself, but also for your players.
One of the things we have to discuss is, what do we mean by finishing touches on world building?
That can be a lot of different things. Here are a couple examples of things that we think would be finishing touches. First off, non-mechanical set dressing. What is that, Matt?
It's story related, not necessarily rules related. So basically, if you are homebrewing subclasses and things like that, we're not discussing that. We are discussing more story-related things.
Right. Finishing touches also flesh the world out a tad, and this tends to be while you're playing versus maybe while you're doing like a pre-game or writing your story.
You can certainly do a lot of this beforehand, of course.
Absolutely. But this is like spur-of-the-moment stuff that really make you a great DM.
Sure.
Or storyteller. It's not necessarily D&D all the time.
Absolutely. Justification is heavy in this, and we'll explain that a little bit further.
We love justification. It's one of the things we talk about a lot in many of our episodes, which I'm sure you're aware of. And then finally, what else is this? Spiciness.
Yeah, you know, you've got your salt and pepper on here. Now it's time to add that deep flavor.
Yeah, you got to have
good stuff.
You have some spice to your world building, and these finishing touches, I think, will help. We have 8 rules, as I mentioned.
The first of which is, if that is true, what else is true?
Now, this is an old improv rule that I follow religiously.
Sure.
You got to yes and stuff, folks, and it applies amazingly for any type of role-playing game. There's nothing better than building on what you or the players have already established.
It is one of the things that when people discuss why actual plays are good, they see something and they don't necessarily understand why something is working so well, why the chemistry is good. And this is one of the reasons why.
It's because everybody has an understanding of what the reality of this story is. If you're playing Call of Cthulhu and the story says that there's some tentacled horrors living in a basement, and that's kind of like the reality of the situation, you might not want to, I don't know, go in a bunch of basements to explore.
Sure.
Because there might be another tentacled horror somewhere.
Or if that's your thing,
you might enjoy. Yeah. Maybe there's bars devoted to tentacle horrors. Hey, look, we're not judging here.
That's right. It's none of our affair.
Not at all. You don't really have to think too hard about this, by the way, because magic can justify a lot of ridiculous assumptions in your world. See our episode Because Magic if you're really curious about it.
Sure. Reeler is something that people talk about sometimes.
Realism in fantasy games?
Yes.
This is always something that we hear on the boards, we hear it in our Discord occasionally, and we hear it complaining on all of the threads on the various socials.
The thing is, you have to really pay attention to what any given thing has to offer long term. Let's take Continual Light as an example.
Okay, so we've got the Continual Light spell. That's right out of the player's handbook. It does what, Matt? It provides
light.
Continual light.
Sure.
Forever.
Yeah.
For 50 gold.
Yes.
You could stick it on a torch. You could stick it on a coin. You could stick it on, I guess, your head.
Sure.
If you want your head to glow. Like
little miner's helmet.
You know what? Why has no one done Ghost Rider? Think about that. That would be great.
Sure.
You get like a skull mask.
And Continual Light.
Continual Light. You're Ghost Rider. You ride a pale horse.
Or Fairy Fire.
Fairy Fire would work as well. All right, so Continual Light works as a spell.
Right. It exists.
It exists. If that's the case, then it's equally possible, say, that lighthouses based off of Continual Light also exist.
True.
Just carrying it a little bit further. Also, like flashlights and torches and things like that. That's already been in lore.
Yeah. You just toss a Continual Light in a bullseye lantern and you basically have a flashlight.
So imagine building a lighthouse. They used to do it with just torches anyway.
Right.
Now you have
an eternal lighthouse. You never have to worry about fuel.
Yeah.
Toss 5 or 6 of those things in there, big convex mirror, ta-da, you're done.
Okay, so if that's true, what else is true, Matt?
What about underground greenhouses?
Sure. Continual light, continual green.
Lamps, just in a home.
I love this one, by the way. Light-based communication.
Yes.
Signaling flares and stuff.
Well, not just that, but at night, you could have a light-based telegraph.
Yes. And then one no one ever thinks about, and this is directly from the real world, round-the-clock work shifts. I mean, the electric light
created the 24-hour city.
Right.
Realistically.
And with continual light in a magical city, you could totally do that.
Fantasy Vegas.
Sucks if you're on the night shift, but hey, look, this is a fantasy game. You guys are adventurers. You're not toiling at 2 a.m. Although, if you're
Probably
a vampire, think about this. If you're a vampire, that would be great.
Yeah.
Because you always have a job.
One of the things it's great for is all of a sudden guarding a gate at night becomes a lot less troublesome. Because instead of only having your tiny little pool of torchlight, you could do the entire length of the exterior of the castle.
It went from like, who goes there with your tiny little torch to just shining a whole bunch of flood lamps on whatever's at the front gate.
I was just thinking spotlights, yeah.
Just come across. Yeah, absolutely. This is a good example. So if that was true, what else is true? Again, just yes and this to death. Rule number 2, variety is the spice of life. What do we mean by that, Matt?
Use descriptors to alter the tone of the thing you're describing.
This is something that new DMs don't often do. They say, hey, look, we're going to be in an ice cavern. Okay, cool. You're in an ice cavern.
It's cold.
It's cold. We could do better than that, folks.
Yeah. Get a thesaurus.
Get a thesaurus. Use your big words. Think about the differences in just that one location. Here's a couple of examples. Instead of saying the ice cavern is cold, what could they say, Matt?
It could be frigid.
Ooh, a frigid cavern.
Sure.
That gives an entirely different mental picture than cold.
Frosty.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that's going to say to you is, instead of this being a ice cavern that is maybe entirely composed of ice, it might be a stone cavern that has frosted over.
Oh, so there might be like rime on the actual stone or something like that?
Exactly.
That's very cool.
Because frosty is completely different than icy.
Yes. You could also have a humid ice cavern. Now, that's really interesting because that means there might be a source of heat or moisture.
It's got to be.
Or maybe something's melting. Also really interesting, right?
Yep.
What's another good example?
Stale smelling.
If you've ever been on the inside of one of those walk-in freezers and you smell something stale, you know what's up.
It's true.
Stark is another good describer. Crystalline is another good describer. Again, giving some variety. So maybe when they're wandering through the ice cavern, you throw in different words for the same thing so that it's not saying, yes, we know it's cold. Yes, we know it's cold. Now you're in a room. It's crystalline in appearance. It is frigidly cold.
Something else to think about is, like, if you go through the glacier caverns,
Mm-hmm.
most of those caverns were created by water. There's a bunch of smooth surfaces. But if you say something is crystalline, now you've got flat edges. You've got sharp points. You've completely changed the narrative of this icy cavern.
I agree. If you said something like it's reflective or opaque or even azure, then now you've given some detail to the light in this, again, still an ice cavern, but now the mental picture is vastly different.
Because in pop culture media, right, ice caverns are white, maybe with a little bit of light blue somewhere in there. In the real world, if you go down into a glacial cavern, they turn very, very, very blue.
They could be all kinds of different ice, different colors, different describers.
Yep. Different amounts of air bubbles trapped in the ice, which is going to change your opacity and all sorts of things.
Absolutely. So use some variety in your descriptions. And piggybacking on that, we have
rule number 3. Every mentioned noun deserves an adjective.
Now, at the Goblin's Corner, we like to call this D&D Mad Libs because the easiest way to get players involved in a story, like lean in on a description, is to add an adjective to a noun. It sounds stupid and easy and it is stupid and easy. It's stupid smart.
The difference between a chair and a comfy chair is one guarantees one of the players is going to sit on it.
Yes, you have now given a gift to the player that they are going to sit on it.
And if they decide it's super comfy, they might take it with them. It's not like we haven't had players that, okay, I steal furniture.
They might animate that chair.
It's true.
Turn it into a pet. Teach it tricks and stuff. I'm not saying that Matt hasn't done that before, but Matt's done that before. All right, so let's give a good example of this. Instead of saying something like, you've entered a dungeon, it's filthy. Okay, so we're in a filthy dungeon, right?
Sure.
Let's add a little bit more descriptors. Now, we've taken the liberty of adding a little bit more to this as well, but what would you say?
You enter a deep underground chamber composed of gray-fitted stone that reeks of the dust of ages.
Well, that's a filthy chamber, right? A deep underground chamber. All right, so we know it's underground. We know it's a dungeon composed of gray-fitted stone. That's really interesting, right? So we know what it's made of.
We know it's been worked.
You know it's been worked. Reeks of the dust of ages.
Which means that this is not a living cavern, right? Things are not going in and out of this place. This has been either sealed off or lost because it's not going to have the dust of ages if there are things constantly in motion in here.
Yeah, very interesting describer. Again, adjective noun, right? Let's do another example.
All right, so what would you say instead of it's a fat red dragon?
Instead of it's a fat red dragon, it is clear that this corpulent crimson dragon feeds well and often. The bones of previous adventurers lie in its teeth, and it reeks of stale dragon must and decaying charred remains.
There you go.
That's a fat dragon.
Yes.
And by the way, when I'm DMing, I usually will do some kind of ridiculous describer and then literally just say at the end, it's a fat dragon.
Yeah.
Because it's funny.
Sure. And, some people love the flowery speech. Some people like it short and clean. The good thing about that is you can do the second one, and it's the Cliff Notes. And the people who faded out during the description will be like, oh, fat dragon. Okay.
Yeah, know your players. That's what we're saying. Rule number 4, justification for unusual things can provide depth to your story, your game, and your world.
Absolutely.
Justify, justify, justify. We told you we were going to say this.
Yeah.
This is, aside from rule number 1, yes, anding it, justification is the next way to establish grounded scenes.
And good flavor.
Yes.
And this is something that I love, and it also is something that your players will be somewhat entranced by because they're like, oh, he's or she has really, really thought about this.
Yeah, I 100% agree with this. There's nothing better than justifying something.
Justification is the contrast to our usual because magic methodology.
Yeah. If you don't have time and you've got something ridiculous that you've come up with, it's magic. There you go. That's an easy answer. But if you can justify something in your story, then it becomes lore. That actually gives more to the players, I believe.
It provides a little logic behind the obvious insanity that is any fantasy world.
Let's take a beholder, for example, all right? It's a big round ball. It's a large-sized creature, by the way. So it's like,
yes.
What, like a 10-foot round ball or 8-foot round ball that shoots laser beams out of its eyes and floats.
Yes.
It poops out of its mouth. It has no, it like literally the digestive system goes in, or I think sometimes it sweats.
I believe in Elminster's ecologies, it excreted between its plates.
Sure. So try justifying that. It's tough, right?
Sure.
But something easier to justify, you could. So you got to know what to justify and what not to justify. Now, you could easily say, all right, this thing comes from the far realm. Because it comes from far realm, there's skewed magic that warps the physiology of creatures. Anything that touches the far realm, here's a justification, right?
Right.
Will then immediately be able to do the following things. Maybe it can fly without any rational reason why.
Yeah.
Maybe it only needs one orifice to consume things and excrete.
Or it doesn't excrete. It literally uses all of the nutrients of any eaten thing.
It just absorbs everything.
Yep.
If I toss a bunny into the far realm, maybe it's going to come back shed of its skin. It's going to have extra limbs.
It's going to have eyes on the ends of its floppy ears.
Bat wings, and it shoots laser beams. There you go. That's a great justification for far realm stuff.
That's just what far realms do.
Far realms do. You don't have to justify these immediately, by the way. You could justify this later on in your game, or after the session has ended, you can write that stuff down. You don't even have to justify this to the players at all.
One of the things you can do is if your players have questions, you don't have immediate answers.
Mm-hmm.
Take those questions, write down answers to them, and if your players continue to look into it or research it, now you have answers for them.
100%. I will follow this up with a caveat, though. Follow rule number 1 when you're justifying. Use that to spark interest in your PCs. Again, all of this is to build an engaging and entertaining world. So you want to make sure that your PCs, your players, have fun playing this world and also contribute to the world, which we'll get to in a bit.
Sure.
What's another example that maybe is a little closer to home, easier to use?
If you have crystal butterflies in your world.
Okay, so I've got butterflies that look like they're crystal, or maybe they're made of crystal.
Right. Maybe they feed on flowers from volcanic regions that actually crystallize because of the environment they're in. And so slowly the butterflies take on those crystalline properties.
So we're following, if that was true, what else is true, right? So we've got an ecology based off of volcanic creatures.
Sure.
I mean, there's magma elementals and stuff like that. What a cool idea.
One of the other things I thought of a while back is the fact that there are, in a lot of descriptions of fantasy stuff, elven wines that glow.
Right. How do they glow?
I have the answer.
Okay.
Bees pollinate glowing flowers because there's always glowing flowers.
Sure. Got a magical forest. There's going to be some glowing flowers. They do ridiculous things.
You take the glowing pollen, you make glowing honey, and now you've got glowing mead.
There you go.
Or it's honeyed wine, and it glows because of the glowing honey you put in it. There you go. Problem solved. The start of your glowing wine all the way to how it started.
An easy answer for everything.
Yep.
Speaking of other things we have easy answers toward, we have what tonight?
It's time for the question of the week.
Okay. What is the question for this week, Matt?
If you were to do a world building exercise with your players, what single detail would you want them to come up with first?
To come up with first. Unless I'm playing an established world that is a box set of some sort. Let's say I'm building my own world, which is what this whole episode's about.
Right.
I find the afterlife tends to be the most difficult world building for me personally. Now, I'm not talking about like the heavens and the hells, but like what happens right after you die?
Immediately.
Immediately after you die. Does something like the Grim Reaper show up? Do you go to a specific place like the Fugue Plain in Forgotten Realms? Or maybe you just end up in your respective heavens or hells? Like what happens after you die? What do the players believe?
I like that.
That's tough for me for world building. I don't know why. It is. I could throw all kinds of ridiculous creatures in there, but that part seems to be something that I think that you should get player
input on.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that really makes it interesting. Because when they die, they have a place they recognize that they've built.
It also, if you create what happens after you die as a player, right? It takes some of the personal player fear of a character dying off the table a little bit.
That makes sense, yeah.
I am on the opposite side of the coin from you.
Okay, so instead of death, you're saying birth?
I want to know what the players think one of the creation myths of this world is. I'm not going to say it's true. I'm not going to say it's false, but they get to create at least one of the actual creation myths of this world.
I love this idea because there should be multiple creation myths.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody agrees on anything, and no one should agree on anything in a fantasy world either, the way I'm concerned.
Yes and no. If there's a god that you can literally just phone call and be like,
that's a different story. Yeah. But I like the idea that maybe there's like dissenting viewpoints of how things are the creation of the world. That's really cool, right? They might call one god different names, and it's still the same god. That also is really cool. So that makes for an interesting just mythos to your world that you're making.
The other fun thing you can do is take each player into a separate room, give them 10 minutes to come up with a creation myth.
And just call it a day?
That means you now have, 4 to 6, 4 to 10, depending on how big your table is, creation myths for the world.
Yeah.
And you can literally just take each one and ascribe it to a culture or a people or what have you.
There you go. That's easy world building right there.
Yep.
And your players, when they hear that, then get really interested in that as well. What is your answer to the question of the week? We'd love to hear about it.
Answer on any of our social media or comment down below. It's what it's for if you're watching YouTube.
That's right. So we're talking about finishing touches to world building. We've already done 4 rules, and next up is number 5.
This is one of our favorites. It is the Easter egg info drops.
Giving a little bit of information, sometimes called foreshadowing.
For those that pay attention.
That's right. Tiny Easter egg drops tossed in when you're describing a scene, dungeon, or whatnot can easily provide chances to insert amazing content.
You don't want to ham fist this.
You want to sprinkle it in a little bit.
Exactly. Lure your players with the information, and if they don't bite, don't worry about it. This is gift giving.
The idea behind this is that you are providing a couple of things that you find interesting about your world as a gift to the players. If the players react to it, then what it ends up happening is they get to build upon this gift. And oftentimes, you will have something ridiculous created because of it. And it's great. If they don't bite, don't worry about it. Write it down after the session, bring it back some other time, or don't bring it back.
If they show no interest and continue to show no interest, write it off. It's not a big deal.
Great storytellers do this. They drop a lot of different interesting hints, little details. Again, we're using the rest of the rules for this, right? Maybe it's just a ridiculous adjective that's describing, I don't know, a bug.
Sure.
A fiery beetle. Oh, that's interesting. Why is it fiery? Maybe it literally is on fire. Maybe the player character thinks it's on fire. Now it's on fire.
Yeah.
Now you've got a lore dump, right?
Sure.
That's a cool Easter egg. If they just kind of go, that's an interesting fire beetle. Maybe they're about to fight the gigantic version of that in the next scene. You just gave them a little bit of a foreshadow there.
Something else that you should try and do as a DM, GM, what have you, is when a player provides you with some little bit of description that you find interesting, make a note and do the exact same thing back.
Yes, because players providing you with details is a gift.
Yes.
That is the best kind of gift.
If you're making a noble character, for example, and I tell Eric, my family colors are purple and green, that now indicates that wherever I'm from has heraldry.
Yeah.
That wasn't necessarily a thing we discussed until I just decided that those were the colors my character wore.
You might be a secret noble, or maybe you don't know that you're a noble, and later on you find out that you're one. How cool a gift that is. Also, and I want to stress this as well, it's not necessarily the player characters directly giving you a gift. Oftentimes, it's something that was missaid or a mistake.
Yes.
Our perfect example of that, we've talked about it in several episodes, is the bread dragon.
Very true.
This was a mistake on my part as a DM, but there's lots of instances where player characters have made an inside joke, and now that joke becomes a thing. The bread dragon I was trying to say red dragon, and it came out as bread. Everybody heard it as bread. It became bread, and now we have one in our ludicrous bestiary.
Sometimes a slip of the lip is more fun to run with than not. We've got bear barnacles that now exist
because of this.
Because I don't even remember where it started, but we've decided that a Triton druid bred land barnacles for armor, and somehow they adapted to live on mammals.
I think one of the descriptions someone was talking about, they misheard it and they thought that the bear had barnacles on it.
Yeah.
And as a result, there was this long-running joke about animals with barnacles, and I thought that was really cool. Now there's barnacles on land animals.
That's right.
That's how it works, folks.
Yeah.
It's as easy as that.
They're filter feeders, but now they filter feed like air plants.
Sure. Snatch little bugs out of the air.
Yeah. And that is a good jumping point to talk about rule number 6.
Lean into the consequence of action in your world. So everything we've been describing so far has been, well, describe, but go with the flow, right? Yes, and it. Talk about the mistakes, use them as gifts, but these are all actions or things that have happened in your game world. And this is a great way to add finishing touches and lore to your world just by going with the consequences. You're in a living world, right? I would say the best example of this, we both have watched the cartoon.
Yeah, The Tick.
So in The Tick, if you haven't seen the cartoon, you should, but in the cartoon, the moon gets blown up. And before that,
a big M is written on it, and before that, there's like
CHA, because Chairface was carving his name. And so for like episodes later, every time the moon was shown, you see CHA because he never got to finish his name.
But because they kept track of it, it became a continuity in the world that was always humorous. In some cases, it could be a continuity in the world that's always happy or friendly, but it could be a continuity in the world that is always tragic.
Yeah, it could be awful, something awful, right?
Yeah.
But this is a great example of something that you can do as a storyteller after each session. If you're playing a good game, you're laughing, you're having fun, you might have some inside jokes, you might have some lore that you've dropped, maybe some mistakes were made. Write these things down, bring them back. It's as simple as that. These could be events that happened, things already established from your world building, or during the actual game session. And then that becomes the continuity for your game.
If your wizard fireballs in a forest and starts a conflagration that the party has to escape from, just as an example, when they come back months later, there could be a huge scar burnt through the forest from the forest fire that ran out of control because they didn't put it out while they were there.
Yeah, because they burned the forest down.
Yep.
What happens now? The local animals got depopulated. Maybe the city that was heavily involved in forestry has to turn to raiding. Oopsie. That's your fault.
Yep.
That's what
you did that.
That's what you get for being an evoker, right? Your game should be a living world. It's not static unless you're reading out of a module. And even then, if you're a savvy DM, mix it up a little, right?
Yeah. If they kicked in the door either stays kicked in or now it's a repaired door.
There you go. It changes according to what you've written and what you've done. Not only that, what the characters and the PCs in your game have done. Their actions also create events.
Something to keep in mind is these can be small, right? Kicking in the door and it either being kicked in
or giving somebody a drink.
Sure.
Slipping a little bit of poison to the noble.
It could be world changing or world shattering.
The Dark Lord has been released. Right? The moon's been exploded.
Yep. There was a pentagram under that gem. Oopsie.
That's what happens sometimes.
And because of these things, we have rule number 7. You have to lean into the consequences of these actions for players and NPCs.
This is different from rule number 6 in that these are often due to relationships versus direct action. So rule number 6 is more of like, all right, because of this battle, this thing occurred. Because of this event, this thing occurred. Rule number 7 is more, think of the relationships between your players, either in the group, right? Interpersonal relationship between the groups, or their interactions with NPCs that you've created in the game.
Or even the relationships between NPCs because of PC action.
This is really important because the game is about the players.
Sure.
It's not about the world. I don't care about this villager that I've created and written down. I've got stat blocks for this guy.
There may be continental drift, but who cares?
Who cares, right? Who cares about this guy? We don't care. We care about the heroes, right? It's about playing this adventurous game. Players save the town. Let's say they save a town.
Okay.
They leave. They return. They've got a house waiting for them. Why?
Because the people love them.
That's right. They saved the town. They built you a house.
They told the people before they left, we'll be back. We've got some things to do. The town people went, these people saved our lives, saved our houses, saved our children. Let's build a house.
We want them to stick around in case the next monster attack comes.
Sure.
So they can save us again. It doesn't have to be, nice.
Yeah, it could be a little combo.
Yeah. Could help them both, right?
Yep.
A little win-win combination. If the players rescue a group of intelligent monsters for some reason, what might happen, Matt?
Maybe they form like an intelligent monster conclave or like a monster town.
Monster town.
Or what if these intelligent monsters band together and become adventurers modeled after the PCs that saved them?
That would be hilarious. And I think someone should do that and tell us about it. Can you imagine like the archetypical D&D trope where you've got the paladin, the wizard, the rogue,
a goblin dressed like the rogue.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And then you got a giant eagle, which are intelligent.
Oh.
Is dressed like the wizard, right? It's got like robes and streamers that come off of it.
I'm not with that eagle, man. That eagle not only can tear out your face, but can cast fireball.
Yeah, I'm good. I
I'm
don't
good with
need a giant eagle that can strafe.
The cleric is the flumph.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
A life cleric.
Yeah. Cleric of hugs.
Yep.
That's ridiculous. I love this. This can be as simple as a diplomacy event, like helping a noble, becoming a noble, dating a noble, and it can be as complex as an intrigue campaign.
And intrigue campaigns, as you know, they're all about personal relationships and how to manipulate those.
That's right. And now, finally, we've come to rule number 8.
And that is give the PCs something to care about, and they will help build your world.
One of my favorite things to do is to get the players involved in the storytelling process. Not because I'm a lazy DM, I am a lazy DM, but because it's fun when they add their touches. Folks, remember, this is collaborative storytelling. If it wasn't, you'd be writing a novel.
Exactly.
Do yourself a favor as a DM, provide opportunities for the PCs to tell your game. Tell your story. It makes your life so much simpler.
As an example, you walk into a shop.
Okay.
I say, the shopkeeper turns around. And you say, oh, well, what do they look like? You tell me.
And they describe the shopkeeper.
Right. Now, this is their shopkeeper.
And depending upon the description of the shopkeeper, it could be a good sale or a bad sale. Could be a really interesting, maybe it's a wizened gnome with a whole bunch of spectacles kind of doubled up on themselves with a ruby gem and a glowing staff. Well, now you might be selling arcane stuff.
Yeah, this could be very well be a magic shop. Or if you've got players who like to be sarcastic and every shop's a magic shop, all of a sudden that very arcane gnome is just running the shop for their very mundane sister or brother because they're having a baby.
And the whole shop is selling brooms. Just brooms.
Yeah.
Brooms are us.
And
can't ride them.
And you 5-foot lengths of rope.
Yeah, brooms and rope. That's great. Yeah, that'd be hilarious, right? This is gift giving at its finest.
One of the things we love to do, in fact, we did an entire episode on it, is the Build-A-Bar workshop.
Yeah.
That doesn't have to be a bar.
It could be a lot of different things. You could give them what?
It could be a monster's lair.
Sure. It could be magical vehicles.
What if their gift, their reward for some quest they've done is a magical vehicle? Now you give them certain specs. It has a land speed, it has a swim speed, and it takes up X amount of room. You tell me, what does it look like?
What does it look like? What do you want to modify it with? This could be a whole campaign where they just mod their stuff. They pimp their ride.
Sure.
D&D pimp my ride, right? And players will go gaga over it, right? We did a whole episode on magical vehicles for this reason.
That's true.
And also, and I must stress this, the best gift-giving event is a session 0.
Yes.
What do you want out of this game? They will tell you. What do you want the world to look like? We talked about the Build-A-Bar, right?
Exactly. You can do a session 0 in 15 minutes where all you talk about is safety and expectations. Or you could schedule 4 hours, you cover the safety expectations, and then you get into actual portions of world building. Start at the very beginning of your campaign if you have the opportunity.
If you can.
To involve them in the world.
And continue to do it throughout the game.
Yes.
Asking the PCs what they think of the world they are helping to create. Find out what the characters want. Provide ways that they can assist in telling their story. And this can be as simple as during combat, during an event, you ask them, what do you think about this? It could literally just be this. You know what? The following events have occurred. You guys talk amongst yourselves for a few minutes, and what do your player characters think about what's going on? And they'll sit there and start speculating on the events. They might come up with some conspiracies and stuff like that. You know what? The best part about that is I write all those ideas down, and I might bring one of them back later.
If your players have a better story for what's going on than what you have prepared, steal it.
Sure.
not only do you now have a better story to tell, but also they get to feel like they were right.
Don't do it all yourself. Savvy DMs let characters write the game for them. And as Matt said, when you unveil this with a couple of touches of your own, they will think that they predicted this game all along and that you are a goddamn genius.
Yeah.
Every time.
As a player, there are few feelings that are better than figuring out the plot or what's going on before there are a lot of details on the table.
I 100% agree.
And as a GM, you can hand that to somebody because they had a better idea than you did. And there's nothing wrong with it.
So there you have it. 8 easy rules you can use to add a little bit of finishing touches to the world building and storytelling for your game to add depth, interest, and most of all, fun. Get your players involved, do a little yes-anding, follow these rules, and I guarantee you will have a great time.
It can be a fun event in and of itself.
Every time. Any questions or comments, hit us up at Goblin's Corner on all the various socials. Did you enjoy this podcast? We're writing a few more. Subscribe to it on your favorite player, YouTube, and Twitch.
Click the 5 stars and give us a review on iTunes, Podchaser, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button. It gets our show in front of more people, and it feeds the hungry algorithm.
Which is currently hopping forth with eyes on its digits, wings, no skin, and is shooting laser beams with a rabbit-like hop.
And a daggery frog tongue.
A daggery frog tongue. Yeah, comes from the far realm, guys.
Sure, for
That's
reasons.
how it works. That's all the time we have for tonight. Once again, my name is Eric.
And I'm Matt.
We'll see you next time.
Good night, folks.
The Goblin's Corner has been written and produced by Eric Holden.
And Matt Staples.
D20 did our music.
And this is, in fact, a subterranean production.
Your voice is so low.